let's have a look at our chassis rail. So here we are. So it's looking good. There's quite a few components there that that's made up out of. I'll take it off in a minute, we'll have a look at that. So I've just sort of clamped it together and holding it together with Avdale, see what we've got. That's working out. That's the original one. And you can see why I'm replacing it. That and this damage in here, you see it's all crumpled there. So you can see that crumpling there on that bit, on the outside edge. And that's all from that accident damage. You know, in the past, you can see through here, it's sort of creased in here. Let's see if you can see that. Yeah, you can see it's all creased in there. So I thought it was better to replace it, and there's a lot of rot in it. So I've cut it back enough to deal with all of that. So, you know, that lot and all the rust that was in further up. So that's that bit. Now, this bit around the side here, this perimeter, this bit I'm going to try and save. That's original. So I took that off of there. You can see I've taken that off of there. But I made a new one of them. I've straightened that. That was all bent up and everything. So I've already straightened that. And then that, you know, you have this sort of little pressing piece in there. Well, that has a tube that goes up to here, to this area, which is going to be the same as that bit. You see that tube there? See? That is a water drain, and that will go down there and goes down into the hole there somehow, into a little tube through that hole. You can see this one's all damaged and horrible, so we'll deal with that when we get to it this side. That's another job, but it's not as extensive that side. So that's what that'll do. Now this is all off. This whole area is cut off because that is, you know, all that needs dealing with as well. And our boot floor, as we know, but this needs doing first. So I guess we could take this off and have a look at, you know, how many bits it's made of, because it's made of a few bits. So we'll unclamp it. See what we got. It's a bit of a thing, really. So yeah, all right, let's get this off here. Now that piece, the actual mount, the rear spring mount, I've had all that blasted and I've treated it with rust treatment and you know, painted it and so on. Okay, you can see what we've got in there. I've got to clean that up a bit before I weld it all on, you know, weld the new one on. Well, that's it. Let's have a look at this on the bench. Okay, so you can see that landing panel there underneath. You know, say that well, I told you about that, the drain and so on. So let's get rid of that lot. Let's get that bit off first, and then have a look at the rest of it. So this is so many panels together to make it out. That's that one. And that one goes in round here. That's off. And then there we are. So now we'll have a look underneath to see how the rest of it's constructed. So this fold comes up here, but then that bit goes under there. Then they make a little fillet piece to go in there, which we've seen that, you know, sort of behaviour on this before, haven't we, on that way of doing it. Then this is a closing panel. That's a closing panel for the end of it. So we'll take that off, and then we'll see it's even more complicated under there. That's that off, that's the closing panel. Then behind it we have another closing panel, which is that one. And then we have a little corner piece here, little piece there, you see? Get it in the So that's another panel. And that is because that top part of the chassis rail, see that where that spot welds through there, goes to this end, and they've notched it out there and then fold that down so that you can join onto there, so that can become a finisher. So it's a lot of complications, isn't it? But it's how they're sort of doing it. You know, we saw this with this bit, didn't we? That they put this in because they want to bump it down and move it across here, because that's where that goes on there, you see. So that area obviously does that. So that floor actually goes underneath it. You see? So that'll go like that. That fits on it like that. That's what we got. And that will all spot weld through there. And then that, see my pen mark? That's how much more metal I've got to take out of this floor for that tub to go in. And then that corner where the chassis rail will get notched out, bent down into it, effectively welded on. So that's what we got. So it's a lot of mucking about, isn't it? People have made comments about how complicated this is, and it is. But you can see everything's folded. It's all very origami, isn't it? Just folded up bits, not pressings. And I think it was their attempt to start this sort of monocoque construction. You know, how sheets are all spot welded together like on a more modern car, or a more productionised car, for want of a better description. So that back end is like a separate monocoque and all spot welded together. And then this front end is very traditional, you know, normal sort of box section welded together. Although it's actually not that traditional, because you know, normally they'd use a tube chassis, but they won't have a box, I think, just because it's easier. Possibly they decided it was stronger, I don't know. They were trying to get this car to be fairly light, so there might be to do with that. I'm not entirely sure why this is boxed, because the 3500 wasn't. So this is a major departure from the 3500 construction, in a more modern way, attempt to be more modern in its construction. That's my thoughts anyway. But it is. But as I say, it's nearly all sort of folded together, isn't it? It's all folds. You know, everything's folded together. I mean, obviously there's a seam on there, but we've seen spot welds, haven't we? Because I've been drilling them out. So we've seen plenty of spot welds. So they clearly had access to the spot welder for doing it. You see, like all through here. Yeah. But then it was sort of gobbed on with this stick welding when they attached it to that bit. So I say this would have been built on a jig off of the rest of the chassis and then fitted to it, which is why it's quite awkward to reconstruct it without completely deconstructing it first. But yeah, look, you see spot welds through here. So that's a very modern, you know, it's modern technology using spot welder for this sort of assembly. So I think it was a sort of, you know, they were sort of dabbling with that new technology, but mixing up with the old stuff. So it's a sort of bit of a hybrid, for want of a better description. A bit of strange brew, really. But what do you think of that? I think it's coming on well. And a weather report? Should we go have a look? If we get out and we're quiet, we might hear the owl. But what we have got, clear skies and a beautiful moon. Isn't that quite something? You went quiet the owl, didn't he, when we was out there? We'll try again tomorrow.
until tomorrow. That will do.